Hello everyone, and welcome back to week 2 of Edible Estates. Well done for all the planting. It was great to see all the boxes getting filled up with seedlings. And yeah, we're going to just have a look at what's been happening in my box this week. So not a huge amount. Seedlings are still just settling in. The strawberries are starting to send out little flowers. So what will happen is that they will flower, and then the flower will fall off, and where the flower was, it will turn into a strawberry. So everything else is still just establishing. There's no sign of any seedlings yet, or any sprouts from the seeds yet. But what we can do this week is pick a bit of lettuce. Ooh. So I've just got my lettuce bowl and a pair of scissors. You can use your fingers when you're picking, but just be careful not to pull too hard on the plant and pull it out. So I just use scissors because they're easier. And just snip close to the stem on the outer leaves, and you'll have yourself a salad. What happens is that the lettuce will keep producing leaves, growing them up from the center. So as you're cutting from the outside, it's just making space for more central leaves to fill out. Don't take off all of the leaves because it needs the leaves to photosynthesize to feed itself, but we'll talk about that just now. So you can see here we've got our salad. Another thing we can also start using now is the rosemary. Rosemary is a herb. It's good for brain function, so you can drink it in a tea, which helps with concentration. You'll just take off a few of the little leaves on it, and you can put those into boiling water if you're having a tea, or you can cook with it. You can just chop it up fine and add it into stews. It goes really nicely with potatoes. So it's a culinary and medicinal herb, and you can use it for both, in both ways. Okay, so I've got some of my rosemary for my tea later. Okay, so just in terms of how plants feed themselves, photosynthesis, it's a reaction that happens in the leaves, and it's using sunshine, water, and carbon dioxide, and there's special cells inside which contain chlorophyll, and they have a reaction that is called photosynthesis that then creates starches and sugars. The plant uses this to feed itself. It also uses it in a symbiotic relationship with the microbes in the soil. So we spoke last week about the millions of bacteria and fungi in the soil. And what happens around the roots is that the fungi and the bacteria will create a relationship with the little hairs on the root. And the plant can't access minerals in the soil on its own. But what it does is it exchanges sugar, the sugar that it's making during photosynthesis. It exchanges the sugar with the fungi and the bacteria because they can't make sugar themselves because they live under the ground, under the soil, and they then swap minerals into the plant's root. So that's the exchange that happens underneath. And things like potatoes and carrots and vegetables that grow underneath, that's starch being stored by the plant. So basically it's stored sunshine. So that's photosynthesis. We're going to talk a little bit about biodiversity. Biodiversity includes all the life around us. It's from the microbes in the soil to the plants around us, to the animals, to the insects. And it's a vital part of the ecosystem that we live in. Without the biodiversity, we would be in trouble. And unfortunately, biodiversity is under threat because of the development of towns and cities, and wild spaces being turned into urban areas, and also because of the use of pesticides and herbicides in intensive farming, and just generally kind of tidy gardening, just too much cutting and trying to keep things very neat. A lot of our biodiversity has been lost, and we're reaching a critical point at the moment in terms of biodiversity loss, and it's something that we need to all try and support in any way that we can. So it doesn't have to be a huge thing, it's just to create small spaces in our gardens. If we have gardens, that biodiversity, insects, plants can grow and sustain each other. So in my garden I have a frog patch that I cut around it so that I'm not affecting the borders of the property that I'm in, and I just let this little patch grow, and I've probably got about 15 frogs living in there. They like water, but they don't have to have water, so I don't have a pond, but I just create sort of little habitats with piles of sticks or logs that they can crawl under, and I water on hot days. I just water my patch. And if I come out and have a look in here, I would find easily 20 different species of plant, and insects, little hoverflies, bees, wasps, bumblebees, just getting food and getting water that they can then use to survive. So there's a fantastic booklet that has been released by Heritage Island that is called Gardening for Biodiversity, and in it just has ideas on what can be done to support biodiversity in our own gardens. So we are going to be sending one out to each of the families that are doing the project, and if you can just get a few ideas from there and ways that maybe you can support biodiversity in your garden too. When we're gardening for biodiversity or trying to include spaces for biodiversity in our gardens, there are 4 key things that we're looking to include. It's food, which is plants, petals, pollen that is in flowers. It's shelter, so it's little spaces where creatures, insects, frogs, bees can hide. Water, and just biodiversity friendly management, so not being too overzealous when we're cutting things and keeping things too uniform and tidy. It's a tricky one because I myself like to see sort of a nicely cut lawn and a tidy space, but I'm trying to shift the way I look at things, and instead of looking at something like my frog patch as messy, I'm trying to see it as a home for loads and loads of really, really important insects. And I'm trying to get to know the different plants that are growing in it. There are a lot of wild herbs. There are plants in there that I can eat, things like dandelion, plantain. The leaves of those can be included in salads, and they're full of nutrients. So I'm trying to just shift the way I look at things, and instead of seeing it as negative, I'm trying to see all the positives in it as well. Monaghan County Council they're one of the councils in Ireland that have adopted the all-island pollinator plan. So it means that they are going to be trying to manage the wild spaces in Monaghan, like parks and verges, in a biodiversity friendly way. So they've been planting more pollinator plants. I think in spring it was fantastic to see all the flowers and the bulbs coming up. And they also are going to be doing a lot less mowing. They will mow only at certain times of the year that are protecting nesting times, or nesting times mainly for birds, so that they're not cutting hedges when the birds are nesting and damaging the eggs. They have said that they come across that there is a bit of resistance to it because it does tend to look messy when you're driving, but I think if we can all start looking at these spaces and seeing the benefits of them and realizing just how important they are in supporting the insects and the biodiversity that then in turn supports us.